Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream and happy birthday, Israel. This is Israel's Independence Day, May 14th. On this day, 76 years ago, folks, Israel was miraculously reborn as a nation in the modern day. 76 years old, folks. Listen, I was in Israel. I've been in Israel on several Independence Days. One of the most memorable, I think, was the 70th birthday in 2018. That was the very day, May 14th, when the U.S. Embassy moved to Jerusalem, where it always belonged. And I was at that ceremony, the grand opening of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. So every year it seems that May 14th, Israel's Independence Day, is a poignant day. Obviously, it's a day for not only looking back at what's been accomplished in the past 76 years, but looking ahead to God's prophetic plan, what he still has in store for his land in the days to come. And yet, Hamas, Hezbollah, these Iranian proxies, they don't observe Israeli Independence Day. Evil seemingly never takes a holiday. So today we had Hamas fighting the IDF in Gaza. We had a Hezbollah firing rockets into northern Israel. We'll break that down in just a second. But just so you know, folks, usually Israel's Independence Day is a festive occasion. It's a celebratory time. Israelis across the country are having barbecues. They're outdoors. They're with family, friends. It's a national holiday. It's a time to celebrate the absolutely improbable, miraculous rebirth of the nation. Again, 76 years ago today. Improbable, impossible, seemingly, after 2,000 years of dispersion around the world. But with God, all things are possible. And Israelis on Independence Day celebrate that. But obviously, Israel is at war right now. This is, in many ways, an Independence Day like no other. And by the way, yesterday was Israel's Memorial Day. So every year it's back to back. Israel observes its Memorial Day, where they observe, moments, a 2-minute moment, nationwide moment of silence, which is incredible for the fallen soldiers, victims of terror. Memorial Day, and then that blends right into the very next day, Independence Day. So it's from tragedy to triumph, which is really kind of a microcosm of the world's one and only Jewish state, right? From tragedy to triumph. The Jewish people have seen a good deal of tragedy over the millennia, needless to say, but we go from Memorial Day to Independence Day. Memorial Day, always solemn. And again, folks, everything stops in Israel for 2 minutes. Every Memorial Day, you'll actually see Israelis driving down the highway. They'll get out of their cars and they'll stand on the side of the highway next to their cars and just observe those 2 minutes of silence as the sirens wail for 2 minutes, remembering Israel's fallen. It's absolutely powerful, an incredible time to be in Israel. And I've been there on Memorial Days when that siren sounds. I've stood at attention. I've been there on Independence Day where Israel, again, it's 24 hours later. It goes from the somber tone, obviously, and feel, and for good reason, of course, to a celebration. And Israel, Am Yisrael Kai, as the people of Israel would say, the people of Israel live. And as the prophet Amos said, God Almighty speaking through him, the people of Israel have returned to their ancient and ancestral homeland, never to be uprooted again. And what part of never don't Israel's enemies understand? Nevertheless, today, and you see the title of this live stream, Israel pounded by Hamas and Hezbollah rockets on Israeli Independence Day. Let's start with Hezbollah. 5 Israeli soldiers were hurt, wounded today by a Hezbollah missile, and 1 Israeli civilian was killed on Independence Day. Let's break it down a little bit more. Here's some details. Just looking down at my phone here, reading directly from the Times of Israel. An Israeli civilian was killed and 5 soldiers were wounded in a Hezbollah anti-tank missile attack today, guided missile attack, against an Israeli military position near the northern community of Adamit. So this is in northern Israel, and it's been happening now for 7 months, since October 7th to the north. Remember, the day after October 7th, on October 8th, Hezbollah launched what is, I guess you could call, some have called it a low intensity conflict. I'd say the intensity is very high when Israeli civilians and soldiers are being killed in these daily, and I mean daily, Hezbollah barrages. But remember, just as Israel did not start this war with Hamas. It was hoisted upon them on October 7th when Hamas invaded southern Israel. Hey, there's a ceasefire on October 6th. We're talking so much about a ceasefire today. There was one on October 6th until Hamas unilaterally broke it and invaded southern Israel and slaughtered 1,200 people. The next day, the dust hadn't even settled. October 8th, Hezbollah unilaterally began firing rockets and missiles at Israel. This is a war that Israel did not choose. It was chosen by Hamas and Hezbollah. And now we have a situation where Hezbollah is firing rockets on a daily basis into Israel, killing people and wounding people every day. And we have a situation where at least 60,000, some people say as many as 100,000 Israelis living in the communities in northern Israel along that Lebanon border have evacuated their homes. It's 7 months, folks. We don't know when they're going home. They're living out of suitcases in hotels. The last time I was in Israel was in February, and look, in the hotel we were staying in the Galilee, 90% of the occupants were from northern Israel, from places like Metula along the Lebanon border. They said, look, Eric, we've been living out of a suitcase in this hotel for months, and we don't know when we're going home. Folks, the bottom line here, we saw it again today on Independence Day with this latest Hezbollah barrage. The situation in the north is not sustainable. You can't have 7 months where an entire region of your country is a ghost town. And essentially, much of northern Israel is exactly that right now. Your economy long-term can't weather that. Northern Israel, agriculture, farming, a big part, obviously, of the economic engine there, and it helps to drive the entire nation. Hey, Israel is the size of the state of New Jersey. So when an entire region of the country essentially goes dark, then you've got a problem long-term. And what do we have now? 2 regions. We have southern Israel near the Gaza border, that once thriving area. Obviously, in the wake of October 7th, a very different place. And it's not that commerce has started back up there again in a major way, obviously. Many in the south are still evacuated, tens of thousands who haven't returned to their homes near Gaza. There's a war raging in Gaza, so they can't be blamed. And the communities aren't ready, most of them anyway. They're still being rebuilt 7 months on after the complete carnage and devastation wrought by Hamas on October 7th. Lebanon, look, portions of Lebanon, along the Lebanon border, I should say, northern Israel, feel like a ghost town. I was there just 2-3 months ago, and I walked in these areas. And it's a really helpless feeling for the people of northern Israel who say, we don't know where this is going, but it can't last. So on Independence Day, Israel's 76th birthday, you have an entire region of a tiny country essentially shut down, northern Israel. And you also have a chunk of southern Israel shut down near the Gaza border. Folks, long term, it ain't going to work, to be very blunt. And Israelis know that, and I believe Israel's government knows that. So what can be done on this 76th birthday for the world's one and only Jewish state, which not only survives but thrives against all odds? What can be done? Where are we? I mentioned Hezbollah, what's going on in the north. Over the past week, Hamas has fired rockets at Beersheba, which is the largest city in Israel's south. Hamas has fired rockets at Sderot, which is about a mile and a half from the Israel border, which was hit from the Gaza border, which was hit very hard on October 7th. And now today, we have 14 Israeli soldiers wounded in battles across Gaza. As Israel gears up to go into Rafah in a major way, we think. Right now, it's limited into eastern Rafah. Israel controls the border crossing between Gaza and Egypt. Israeli tanks have rolled in, but there hasn't been that major assault that it seems is needed to root out Hamas in Rafah once and for all. Some 4 Hamas battalions there. Perhaps Hamas leaders, Sinwar, different views on that. Is he in Khan Yunis? We don't know. But you have to think that some Hamas heavy hitters are hiding out in the tunnels beneath Rafah. And there's a good bet that Israeli hostages are there as well. Reminder, some 132 Israelis are still missing, still in Hamas captivity. Not all are alive, reportedly, sadly, tragically, but many are. So Israel has to go into Rafah, which is, again, Hamas's last stronghold. If you don't, you leave Hamas alive to fight another day. Here's the problem. The Biden administration and Western leaders have essentially tied one arm behind Israel's back and are levying all sorts of threats at Israel over a potential Rafah invasion. They're wailing, they're gnashing their teeth. Just on Sunday, Anthony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, said, quote, Israel needs to get out of Gaza. Needs to get out of Gaza now. Really? Well, that guarantees that Hamas will remain in power, and that guarantees more, at least attempts, at October 7th style assaults on Israel by Hamas. It's just gotten too nasty. It's bad PR, so Israel has to get out of Gaza now. Israel, last I checked, folks, and I think we're reminded of this today of all days on Israel's Independence Day, keyword, independence. Israel is a sovereign nation. The lectures, the dictation being dictated to by the Biden administration, my word. And that is why this has stalled out in Gaza for week upon week now, and why Israel hasn't gone into Rafah. But now we have the problem metastasizing. Central and northern Gaza were under control for the most part. Yes, there were still pockets of resistance, but the IDF mainly had them under control. They conquered northern and central Gaza in a stunning, stunning military operation, stunningly successful. Now, over the past several weeks, this is kind of grind to a halt. And now we see Hamas jihadists reoccupying areas of central and northern Gaza. So we see the IDF going back in and having to root them out again. Are we going to have a whack-a-mole type situation here, folks, where Israel roots out a Hamas stronghold, Israel leaves under world pressure, then what was cleared out becomes a Hamas stronghold once again as they scurry like rats back into their little cubby holes and reoccupy places like they're doing in central and northern Gaza? Can't have it. We've been hearing about a major Rafah offensive for months at this point, and we've been hearing the world wail, howl, and gnash its teeth over that very prospect. But how can Israel win in Gaza if they don't go into Rafah? I don't see a scenario where they can, because Hamas in Rafah, that leaves them alive to fight another day. If Hamas remains in Rafah, I should say. But we have a top U.S. official. So what does victory look like? I don't know. I do know. I don't know what we're going to get, I should say, but what I do know is this. Israeli military and government officials have said, look, victory essentially looks like this. Hamas is smashed and destroyed. They can never, ever threaten the state of Israel ever again in any meaningful way, and they no longer govern Gaza. I don't think you can accomplish that if Rafah is not dealt with. And I don't know how the IDF is going to deal with it, what they've got up their sleeve. But the Biden administration, as we reported here last week, Biden has said if Israel decides to go into Rafah in a major way, we are withholding arms shipments to Israel. They're already withholding one shipment, but Biden's going to make this a blanket ban if Israel goes into Rafah. So now you see why there's been some feet dragging in terms of Israel not going into Rafah. I can only imagine what Israeli leaders are weighing under this relentless pressure from the United States. Whoever saw such a thing, to be browbeat by the nation or the leaders of the nation, which is your closest ally in the world, on the public stage in a very public way, in front of the eyes of the world, at a time when existential threats are gathering on all sides, a month after Iran launched over 300 projectiles at Israel, 7 months after October 7th, as Hezbollah's killing, wounding civilians, soldiers every day in the north. The Biden administration chooses this moment in history on the eve of Israel's Memorial Day and Independence Day to completely throw Israel under the bus. And Israel's enemies are taking notes, folks. The Iranian regime chief among them. And they're saying Israel's alone. The Biden administration's all talk. And yeah, they might help Israel strike a defensive posture and intercept some incoming projectiles, but they'll never go on the offensive. And they won't allow Israel to go on the offensive. They will restrain Israel at every turn. Folks, if the Biden administration had its way, Israel would have never gone into Gaza in the first place after October 7th. It wouldn't have happened. There would have never been a ground offensive. It would have been the status quo of carry out some airstrikes for a week, 2 weeks, call it a day, and then it starts back up again in 3 or 4 months. That's a sad fact. We're at a point now, though, where the Biden administration, I want to pull this quote up from a top Biden administration official. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell said yesterday, quote, "I don't think we believe that Israel can achieve total victory in Gaza." He said, "I don't think we believe that is likely or possible." How nice from your closest ally. And that we believe, the Biden administration, this looks a lot like situations that we found ourselves in after 9/11. Oh, like in, say, 2021, when the Biden administration disastrously pulled out of Afghanistan in a way that projected absolute weakness to the entire world. Like that, do you mean? So the messaging is pretty clear from the Biden administration. Israel can't win. It's a lost cause. It's a quagmire. It's just like the U.S. after 9/11. You see it already, folks. Don't go into Rafah. You don't want to do this. And if you do, there will be consequences and repercussions. So this is where the rubber hits the road, ladies and gentlemen. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's leaders, have been saying now for week upon week, we're going into Rafah. We're going to take care of business, whether the U.S. likes it or not. We're about to find out. Is this going to happen? And then we have this week also, when we talk about the restraining from Rafah, we have reports. And again, closest ally, the United States, ostensibly Israel's closest ally in the world. The American people, certainly, who are still overwhelmingly supportive of Israel. I talked about a Harvard University poll that was released 2 weeks ago. And look, folks, you see what's going on Ivy League college campuses. Harvard is not exactly a bastion of pro-Israel sentiment, needless to say, quite the opposite. But even a poll partially commissioned by Harvard 2 weeks ago found, get this, folks, 80% of all Americans support Israel's war in Gaza to defeat Hamas terrorists, and 72% of Americans support an operation in Rafah. So the Biden administration directly contradicts the American people that it claims to represent in its treatment of Israel here. So that's an important fact to bring out. When you say all is lost, well, the American people have a far different view of what's happening in Israel, in the Middle East, than does this current administration. And yet, this administration is calling the shots right now. We have reports over the weekend that Joe Biden is dangling in front of Israel essentially intelligence, intel on the whereabouts of Hamas leaders, and the Biden administration reportedly telling Israel, this is blackmail basically, if you don't go into Rafah, we will provide you with intel about Hamas leaders. And I presume hostages? What a nasty, low-down, dirty trick. We have intel. This is the equivalent of Israel saying to the United States after 9/11, we know, we have intel on where Osama bin Laden, Ayman al-Zawahiri, and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the 9/11 masterminds, Israel says, we know where they are. We've got the intel that could really help you find them, but we're not going to give it to you unless you do A, B, or C. Nasty, right? And if Israel did that to the United States, tried to withhold intel like that, an ally did that to another ally, we'd be outraged, and rightfully so, but Israel would never do that. But the current U.S. government is doing exactly that, reportedly, withholding intel. We've got this juicy information, Israel, that could help secure your nation and protect your citizens and could help end this war sooner, taking out the heads of the snakes, Hamas leaders. But we're not going to give it to you unless you give us what we want, and that means not going into Rafah, essentially withdrawing from Gaza prematurely and leaving Hamas alive to fight another day. The Biden administration keeps saying, what does the day after look like to Israel? And they want answers. Well, what does the day after look like for them? I'd like to hear it. What do they envision Gaza looking like? Are they on board with a complete denazification of Gaza, deprogramming of the people who have been steeped in this Nazi Hamas ideology, which Hamas has brainwashed generation after generation of children in? We saw after World War II, Japan, Germany, essentially deprogramming in those societies. Oh, Gaza needs that after Hamas's reign of terror for some 2 decades, almost. Is the Biden administration on board with that? They want the Palestinian Authority to come on in, Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority, which also does not recognize Israel's right to exist, and which pays regular salaries and stipends to terrorists who have murdered Israelis. It's called pay for slay. Hamas and these other Palestinian terrorist organizations also have American blood on their hands. Helpful reminder. Oh, and I believe there's 8 U.S. citizens still being held hostage by Hamas in Gaza. I'm an American. I love my country. Why aren't we hearing about this from this administration? Anything other than lip service. Oh, yeah, we're going to bring our hostages home. Yet you're not taking any steps towards doing that. Israel's trying to do that, and you're tying their hands behind their backs. We could go on. But today, folks, well, it's not under the current circumstances, but it is supposed to be, and traditionally has been, a festive occasion for Israel, Independence Day. And it's a somber one this year. But listen, I know Israel will prevail in this battle. I don't know which direction it's going to take. Rafah, Gaza, I don't know. Hezbollah, when? It's not a question of if, but when. We know that about a great northern war. But it is coming. And I don't know how much longer, folks, Israel can. They're not standing by. The IDF is striking back. I want to make that clear in Lebanon and hurting Hezbollah. But how long can the IDF wait before really carrying out a major operation so that Hezbollah, look, it's a non-starter in terms of Hezbollah firing rockets and missiles every single day into Israel? I don't know how long Israel can wait. Are they waiting to wrap up? I previously thought, look, Israel wants to wrap up Rafah, wrap up Gaza, then they will turn their sights to the north and Hezbollah. It's taking a long time to wrap up Rafah and Gaza, and that's an understatement. Israeli leaders, military leaders know what they're doing. They're among the best. But you have to think that it's this Western pressure that's holding things up. I think it's pretty obvious. And the other carrot that the U.S. continues to dangle is, look, Israel, if you don't go into Rafah, then you can have, if you don't go into Rafah and you recognize a Palestinian state, key point there, then we can help you normalize relations with Saudi Arabia. So that's the other carrot they're dangling. Hey, we've got intel on where Yahya Sinwar is and Hamas leaders. Oh, and if you don't go into Rafah, also, look, maybe normalization with the Saudis, history made. What do you think? That's what's being dangled. Folks, it's Israel's Independence Day, 76 years, completely improbable. Who ever heard of such a thing for people? Just a reminder, if you're concerned right now, like we all are, about the state of play, the state of things in Israel, and what's being done, and the rise of anti-Semitism, all of it. We live in dark, demonic times. I don't overstate that. But consider this. Consider how God moves, how he works, how he's on the throne, how he's in control. 76 years ago today, May 14th, 1948, Israel was reborn. I'd say against all, what is greater than against all odds? Is there something even greater than that? Consider this. everyone listening, including trolls who were tuning in, whatever. Who ever heard of such a thing? And I'd really like an explanation. Who ever heard of such a thing for a people to be dispersed, emptied out? Largely, there was always a Jewish presence in the land, by the way, always uninterrupted for those 2,000 years, always. It may have been very small at points, but there was always a remnant of Jews living in the land of Israel after AD 70, when the Second Temple was destroyed in Jerusalem by the Romans. But the vast majority of the Jewish people for 2,000 years were scattered to the ends of the earth. Wherever they went, they were persecuted, hounded, never had a place to rest their head in peace, really. The United States would be the closest thing to that, and now that's changing, it seems, as anti-Semitism erupts even in the U.S. 2,000 years dispersed, hounded, persecuted. It all culminates in the Holocaust. Close to 60% of the total Jewish population slaughtered. And despite all of that, and just 3 years after the Holocaust ends, the nation of Israel is reborn after 2,000 years. Not only that, they revived the ancient Hebrew language, which hadn't been in regular use for some 2,400 years. And they not only survive, but thrive as all of their neighbors, or practically all, from the moment from May 14th, 1948, even before, we're trying to push them into the sea and wipe them off the map. And they're still here. Folks, on May 14th, 1948, 76 years ago today, it got a whole lot harder to be an atheist. None of this is a coincidence. If you can, with a straight face and a clear mind and intellectual honesty, observe the events of 1948, the rebirth of Israel, considering all that came before it, the complete, absolute impossibility, seemingly, of this ancient people returning to their ancient land 2,000 years later. If you can consider all that and say, it was all just happenstance, just a quirk of history, man, then you must have more faith in your ideology than I have in my Lord, and I've got a lot of faith. Folks, no coincidences. And you might not like it. You may wail and gnash your teeth too. But Israel's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. That patch of land, the size of the state of New Jersey, God gave the people of Israel a title deed to that land. And isn't it amazing? Folks, consider this, and I love on Independence Day bringing this out. There are 8.1 billion people in the world. Only 15.7 million of those 8.1 billion are Jews, meaning much less than 1% of the world's entire population. 0.02% of the world's population is Jewish. That's it. And yet the growing legions of anti-Semites around the world say that this tiny, tiny, minuscule people group is responsible for all the world's problems. And they're trying to control the world. And that this tiny Jewish state, occupied by 7-8 million Jews, that's it, is the obstacle to world peace. Really think about that. That's stunning, isn't it? When you really think about that and you sit back, wow, it's an obsession. It's an insane obsession. And it's gone on for thousands of years. And you don't think this is a spiritual battle between good and evil? 15.7 million Jews out of a population of 8.1 billion. A tiny Jewish state, the size of the state of New Jersey. And the world's obsession, ire, venom, and anger is all focused on this tiny nation and this tiny people group. You don't see something kind of weird or out of the ordinary about that, folks? Something deeper than just surface level and the physical, maybe something spiritual. Maybe the entire world howls at and hates the Jews and the Jewish state because God chose them, and the world is in outright rebellion against God. If you hate God, you're going to hate Israel. It's God's land. Israel's continued survival and existence is a daily reminder that God exists. Because there's no other way to explain it, no other rational explanation for the continued existence of this tiny nation and this tiny people group that's been persecuted and hounded for thousands of years, other than God's hand is on them and on their nation. I don't know how else you explain it. Shoot, go ahead. We have a chat here, very active chat. What are your theories? If not God, if not the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, against all odds, any rational explanation, protecting and shielding these people and this land against all enemies. I think it's pretty clear. And folks, this is a time where Israel could use a few good friends. We've got many thousands on this live stream right now. My good friends at Artza are the sponsor for today's newscast. Artzabox.com. Listen, this is a very difficult time to get to Israel. Let me tell you about Artza real quick. Very difficult time to get to Israel since October 7th. I'm in Israel all the time, and folks, even I've had a difficult go of it trying to get to Israel at times with flights being canceled, etc., because of the situation on the ground. Artza brings Israel to your doorstep. These are Israeli-made products made by Israeli small businesses, Israeli artisans in Israel. Hardworking Israelis who are suffering right now. The Israeli economy right now, folks, look, tourism is dead right now, which is one of the main drivers of the Israeli economy. As I said, people are finding it very difficult to get to Israel during a time of war. Airlines aren't even going in some cases. United just extended their travel moratorium until June. But Artza fills in that blank and fills in that gap by bringing Israel to you. These are incredible products, and you're boosting the Israeli economy in a time of dire need. We talked earlier about companies or populations, I should say, being completely evacuated, ghost towns in the north and the south. Again, Israel could use a few good friends. You see the images of what's inside those Artza boxes. Handcrafted, great, beautiful products made by Israeli hands, Israeli businesses. You want to bless the people of Israel? Fulfill that biblical mandate, Genesis 12:3, artzabox.com, and 10% discount. Just use a discount code Watchman, M-A-N, Watchman, 10% off your Artza box subscription for such a time as this, folks. I'm proud. When I do stand with an organization, I'm proud to partner with them. I'm proud to have Artza as a sponsor this month for the newscast. What we do here isn't completely free. It takes a little something to put on a nightly TV show on TBN, to have a daily, very large YouTube channel, nearly 1 million subscribers, a podcast. I wish it was all free, folks. It didn't cost a dime. But we like partnering with people we believe in, like Artza. And that's exactly what we're doing this month. So it's artzabox.com. Check them out. 10% discount code Watchman. Closing thoughts here as we observe, as we celebrate Israel's birthday. Happy birthday, Israel. 76 years old. We've had a very active chat here today. It's been amazing to see what everyone's saying. And there's a lot of love here for Israel and a lot of recognition about the times we're living in and that Israel's continued existence, not only existence, look, thriving. Hey, Genesis 12:3. Remember the second part of that, folks? I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. History bears that out. But also, through you, all nations on earth will be blessed. Wow. This tiny people group has punched far above their weight for centuries. Blessing the world, scientific, high-tech innovations, breakthrough, bringing the Bible to us, bringing the Messiah, Jesus, to us through the Jewish people. It goes on and on. Again, punching far above their weight. And it's not a coincidence because God's hand is on it. And he chooses. Someone said in this chat, why is there so few? If the Jewish people are God's chosen people, it's a small people group. But isn't that the way God operates? He could have chosen the Chinese, billions, the people of India, billions. And God loves the people of China and India, no doubt. But he's got a special, particular plan for the people of Israel. He's got a plan for every nation. But he chose Israel in particular for a specific mission. Part of that was bringing the Messiah, the Lord Jesus, into the world. But isn't it just like God to choose an underdog? It doesn't get any more underdog than to be, I don't know, far less than 1% of the world's total population. But isn't that like God? So fasten your seatbelts. Good things are happening. Yes, we are entering the time of Jacob's trouble, no doubt. It's not going to be easy, and God never said it would be. But Israel will prevail. And I'm reminded of that today on Independence Day when I see Israeli soldiers, the unity in the nation. And we have a special tonight on Stakelbeck tonight, special Israeli Independence Day show, which you'll want to tune in. Remember, it's our brand new weekly show on TBN every Monday through Friday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time with a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Stakelbeck tonight, live reports from on the ground in Israel on this Independence Day. Hey, thanks so much for joining us here today on The Watchman. Until tomorrow, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching.